Bobbyex has his own Quest Rogue and Death Rattle Hunter, but chose to play Even Paladin and Cloning Gallery Priest. So, you know, Firebat said he was trying to target a little bit of the slower decks, things like the Odd Warrior would struggle.
Be like on average, maybe slightly better against some of this slower field. But I've seen a lot of players put a ton of stock in Even Paladin just as an overall solid deck that can take wins against just about everything. As are most Even decks, I feel. They don't have great matchups, but they don't have terrible matchups. And so I understand why he would go for something like that, but honestly, what I feel like is going to be the trouble point for him.
Thousands of his viewers, but he also primarily tries to meme it up, you know, slowly converting to the top Tyson dog way of just like, you know, establish your competitive legacy, earn hundreds and thousands of dollars, and no one can really argue with your results. And just say, you know what, I'm just going to take it easy and try to have a little fun, play some meme decks now and then. And then that resulted in him kind of coming up with some really cool ideas. I remember in the Boomsday expansion launch, he was one of the first people I saw playing Mech-Cthulhu Warrior with like the Malygos Inner Rage Whirlwind combos to clear Mech-Cthulhu. And, you know, that ended up being a deck that Rivia's used to go to the championship. So
Yep.
Firebat's still very much a top contender.
Yeah, and Bobbyex on the other side, he's a player that we've seen at least in playoffs once, but we've seen him compete in HCT a few times. And for this event, he actually practiced with Sohyun, fellow Canadian player, as well as Tare. So maybe taking a little bit of Quest Rogue inspiration from Tare. Yeah. He has I think slightly different lineups than them. I think they settled on like a different Paladin deck at least, because he has Even Paladin. But you can see some of the inspirations from those two players who are very experienced Quest Rogue players coming through with that pick. Also, just in Quest Rogue, just a good read. We saw the very slow and combo-y decks do pretty well in Europe. Maybe not so much in the top 8, but that top 32 had a ton. So Quest Rogue, Mech-Cthulhu, Warlock, I think those were great reads for the tournament.
Well, we'll see if Firebat can climb this uphill battle. Cloning Priest against Even Warlock does tend to have an edge because they have a lot of removal and a lot of burst. And that's kind of the two things that Even Warlock doesn't want to go up against.
Yeah.
There's a ton of burst going against them. That means getting low for the Hooked Reaver range is constantly a liability. But, you know, if Firebat can get that early pressure on, never discount Even Warlock, because even in their worst matchups, every now and then they get a Mountain Giant or Twilight Drake that goes unanswered.
Yeah, I think this Priest deck from Bobbyex is going to take a win regardless. It's got good matchups, I feel like, across the board.
Right.
Against all three of Firebat's decks that are left up, which is the mid-rangey Q Paladin, which there's not much data on. I feel like it might be slightly Priest favored, but there's a lot of healing in the deck, and they can put on a lot of pressure before Psychic Scream even becomes a big deal, but Psychic Scream just wrecks Death Rattle Hunter. The burst damage over the top, plus the plethora of removal, allows it to be Even Warlock. So
I mean, maybe we can go one level deeper here, TJ. The bans were certainly interesting from my perspective, because statistically, Cloning Priest might actually be the ban, because you anticipate that he's going to ban your Quest Warlock, or Quest Warrior. Quest Rogue, I'll get the classes right eventually, I keep guessing. But, you know, with the Clone Priest, it's really good against a lot of the matchups, like you said, but it's also very good against this matchup in Even Warlock. And then when you look even deeper, Even Warlock struggles against almost all the popular decks that's being brought this tournament.
Yeah.
It struggles in the sense that it's got like a 40 to 45% matchup against everything. But it's not polarized. It's not Odd Rogue versus Odd Warrior, for example, which is just so dominantly one-sided.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think even this matchup against like Quest Rogue, for instance, if you just stick a Mountain Giant, sometimes you can just beat him up.
Right.
And push through with Hellfires in the late game. Once you get to, you know, past like turn 10, if you don't have Blood River Gul'dan and they've completed quests, it's very tough. Yeah. But I feel like it would have a better matchup than this against Cloning Priest.
I mean, Quest Rogue is also problematic for Firebat's lineup. I think the numbers are very close, so I don't really think it makes that big of a difference in terms of whether or not Firebat teched. Because I look at his lineup, I don't really see anything particularly special about beating Quest Rogue. So I think in his mind, I think it's definitely a appropriate ban. It's just also, when you look at data, it's hard. Like, literally some of the sample sizes I'm pulling is less than 50 games,
Yeah.
DJ. It's like, that's just not enough.
Not enough.
To draw meaningful conclusions.
And that's just the situation we're in right now with how the tournament metagame differs from the ladder metagame. You go try and play Holy Wrath Paladin on the ladder, you're probably going to have a tough time unless you're in very high legend.
Yeah.
When the decks start to slow down and you can take your time with stuff. But even Warlock, you still see quite a bit. And Bobbyex needs to pick up a little bit of extra removal. He has picked up Malagos in his hand, so the possibility of that just play Xerx's Cloning Gallery on turn 9 and kill your opponent isn't going to happen. Well, it could.
It could, but, you know, things like Skulking Guys might be something of a blessing. It just reduces it reduces the chance that you get bursted in one turn. They have to have, you know, the actual optimal Cloning Galleries plus Mind Blast.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe they don't have the Mind Blast and they have the Holy Smites, and then you can save yourself a turn.
Yeah.
And, you know, things like that is probably what Firebat's weighing in the future. But for now, the most important thing is he knows Bobbyex has that coin. How is he going to handle like a Psychic Scream situation? And I think it's kind of the same thing either way. Just kind of pressure your opponent the best you can. The most amount of damage he can put out is 8 with the Mountain Giant. So go for the most damage.
Yep.
It's pretty straightforward, I'd say. Yeah. And then in BobbyeX's mind, you know, Shadow Word Death is great, but what does he really want from this Shadow Visions? Does he want a Mind Blast?
Probably burn, to be honest.
Sure.
Because if you Shadow Visions into Mind Blast, then you pick up another Mind Blast, then Xerx's Cloning Gallery. With Firebat floating sub 20 health, Cloning Gallery picking up Velen plus double Mind Blast if you have enough Radiance is enough damage to kill even Warlock most of the time post turn 9 because they're floating around that health. And I honestly would have liked to see Bobbyex throw out the Holy Smite there. He knows there's a Skulking Geist. With even Warlock, they're tapping and drawing so much that Skulking Geist becomes more and more of a possibility.
Yeah, and that ended up being a really good move here from Firebat because, yes, you want to stack as much damage onto the board, but in this spot, you want to just get the Skulking Geist out of the way because turn 8 is when you hit the real power plays. And so you want to get things like Skulking Geist out of your hand so that way you don't have to play it later on. Not to mention that Bobbyex has the coin, so he's one turn faster on Xerx's Cloning Gallery. So this ended up being a really good move here. And Firebat, with this Lich King, is also looking for Death Grip or potential ways to just pressure to end the game, such as Anti-Magic Shell.
Doom Pact.
That's probably one of his weakest ones.
Yeah.
And here we go. Cloning Gallery Priest.
Well, if it picks up double Radiant and he Shadow Visions into Mind Blast, that is lethal. So it's double Radiant, Shadow Visions into Mind Blast. Can try again.
Twilight
Nailed it.
Call. Okay, the Mind Blast #2, and that's going to do it. Cloning Gallery Priest, I mean, this is kind of what it does because even Warlock puts itself within that range. But it's like you said, TJ, it was likely to pick up the victory anyways, especially when Quest Rogue is banned. And, you know, things are going to look...
I don't know.
It's quite the head scratcher.
Yeah. I don't think I'd play Hearthstone in very weird places.
I think it's weird for me to be playing Hearthstone with my clothes on. Sorry,
I didn't know where that was going.
Yeah, what I meant to say is I end up being very comfortable when I play Hearthstone a lot of times.
And that's completely in the news.
I didn't say that. I'm saying completely, fully dressed. But yes, I do play Hearthstone naked very often. Let's go into game number 2, Even Warlock against Even Paladin. Now, a lot of people traditionally thought that Even Paladin struggled a little bit because of the assortment of AoE cards, such as the Defile, Hellfire, and Dread Infernals. But not really the case. Even Paladin has a lot of power. Although, with an opening hand like that, Double Blessing of Kings and Tyrion, not exactly what you're looking for. Meanwhile, Firebat is on the coin, meaning that he can get a turn 3 Mountain Giant. And all he needs to do is pick up one single way to sweep the board, and he should be ahead for the majority of the game. So that's kind of where the quote, the balanced or close matchup spread is. It's usually one player taking the board very early on and then pressing for a victory.
Yeah, and especially if Even Paladin gets early damage in, with the way Bobbyex has built his lineup, he's got double Avenging Wrath. So combine that with Equality, and just an assortment of weapons with Valnir and Tyrion, for that Ashbringer, you can piece together a ton of damage in the late game, even through large taunt minions, because of the way that even Warlock floats at low health. So there still is a possibility, even if Bobbyex were to lose the board. And honestly, he curved out pretty much as good as you could have ever expected.
Yep.
And even Paladin to curve out, rolling into Blessing of Kings.
Yep, and denying the Defile setup. So, you know, Bobbyex, should he choose to play Blessing of Kings, is going to lose this Divine Shield. But he kind of knew that going in anyways, just really wants to get the pressure. If anything, Blessing of Kings can be used after he trades it in, so that way he's going to be fine with that. Yep. Does he trade with the Mountain Giant, though? He does.
If you have 2 Blessing of Kings minions on board against even Warlock in the early game, you're in a good spot. Firebat going to be able to halt that pressure with the Spellbreaker, but he's a little bit behind. Bobbyex, though, just picking up
Consecration.
Double Consecration.
Yeah, these are awkward hands to say the least. But the double Consecration might be a blessing in disguise, because Firebat does have a lot of taunt minions. He's got 2 Homunculi, he's got Rin, and he has the Lich King. The Rin, the first disciple for Firebat's end, was a nod to things like Odd Warrior, in case he needed to find a win condition after all of his threats were removed. But I mean, this is one of those positions where if you're Firebat, you could reasonably justify pulling trigger on Defy or AoE in this turn.
Yeah, he also doesn't have Spellstone, so that's a big deal with floating at a low life total, with having Hellfire and the double Vulgar Homunculus in hand.
I just want to deny any Spike Rich Steed from coming down here.
Yeah, that's true. I think Defile tap, and then if you pick up Spellstone, Vulgar Homunculus. If you don't, then Plated Beetle.
Yeah, the Plated Beetle is okay because you're already at 15, so that means if you pick up the Hooked Reaver, you still should be able to play it.
Yep.
So I think it's very reasonable.
And if you pick up Spellstone, I think you want to get the Vulgar Homunculus mana out of the way. Oh, wow. This Shroomber?
Double 2.
Oh, double 2. Wow. I was going to say, Shroomber doesn't make sense because it just dies to the True Silver Champion on board, and the healing brings you out of range of a possible Hooked Reaver next turn if you were to pick it up.
This kind of makes sense because I think that in Firebat's mind, he's not going to have the ability to coin out something like the Lich King without struggling on what's ahead on board right now.
Yeah.
So what Firebat wanted to do was utilize this Plated Beetle to help preemptively control the state of the board. Not really happening right now, but I think it was an admirable effort. And Firebat in this position, kind of stuck in the same spot where he can go a little bit wider with the Shroomber or Vulgar Homunculus, or he can just play Rin.
Yeah, I think I like the Rin better in this situation just because it reasonably challenges the 5/5 on board. Bobbyex would have to have something extra. But if Firebat has a read that Spike Rashid is in hand, Rin doesn't progress that game plan much, and he wouldn't be able to contest it on board. So I think he wants to go a little bit wider.
Yeah, wider makes things like Hellfire a little bit better too, so that way he can spread the damage in case it needs to, but I guess it wouldn't make it that big of a difference. Spike Steed would be problematic no matter what. And now Firebat crossing that 15 life threshold.
Don't say it, Dan. I thought you were going to say the 50-yard line thing again.
Now that Bobbyex has crossed the 50-yard line.
No!
Do you tap if you're in this position as Firebat? When you, on 8 mana onward, you're just like in critical range of like, okay, I'm just gonna die to Avenging Wrath, or Equality Avenging Wrath. I'm gonna die to Pyromancer, Equality, Consecration. You know?
Yeah, and I think it's also been hard for Firebat to make any reads on the hand. There's been a card stuck in the far left, and these other cards have been stuck there too. But it's not like Bobbyex hasn't played on curve every turn.
Right.
He's just chosen weapons as removal and has only floated a couple mana throughout the entire game. So it's hard to have any significant read on what you need to play around, whether you do need to play around Equality Avenging Wrath, because Bobbyex is not floating mana. So just a tough situation overall if you're Firebat. And I think you just have to kind of make the strongest play on board every turn and hope that your opponent just doesn't have the necessary things to deal with it, which is a very brutal way to play Hearthstone if you're even Warlock, because you do float so low all the time.
Yeah, but the good thing about Firebat is he does have an ultimate contingency plan. Like, the Lich King can help bail him out against Tyrion, but he also has the ability to use Blood River Gul'dan and outvalue even Warlock and get out of range. So I like that he's trying to squeeze that value out of Rin first. Ooh. That might be very valuable because of the way Ashbringer and Valinir are going to interact with each other. And Bobbyex, because he drew that Hydrologist, also meant that he didn't have to swing with the weapon.
Yeah.
Because if he was going to play Tyrion, he would risk losing the Valinir for no value.
Well, he could have swung with the Valinir before he played Tyrion. Both Spellbreakers are gone. It would just make a really big Tyrion.
True that.
It wouldn't really have much extra value because, as you mentioned, the weapons override each other. But
wait, you said both Spellbreakers are gone?
yeah, he used the first
on the 5/5.
Oh yeah, no, it's only one
one
Spellbreaker. Yeah, no,
that would have been
right.
disastrous if he ended up stacking it all on one thing and then.
Yeah, I think I was thinking of the last game where he Spellbreakered early on in the game. No, you're right. So that's a very good case to not Valinir the Tyrion, or potentially Valinir the Tyrion.
I think Firebat's super scared of the equality, so he's just going to go for this Hook Reaver play.
Yeah.
He gives him the best chance. Equality would mean that Hellfire and Acidic Swamp Ooze gives him a sweep. Now, normally the Tarim is just like the game-ending push here, but I don't think that's exactly the case in this spot.
That's just so much pressure.
It's a lot. It's a lot of pressure.
You can even discover,
Redemption.
Redemption. I guess Auto Defense Matrix would also be good because you're attacking with Tyrion this turn. So if your opponent attacks into Tyrion, it gets Divine Shield again, makes it harder to clear off. But this one, if there's a Spellstone in hand, Spellstone's the Tyrion, you get another Tyrion. Well, if he trades in the 1/1 and doesn't hero power and plays Redemption, that's a pretty big indication. But gonna keep Firebat guessing.
Yeah, I think this is good just to make Firebat second guess himself a little bit, just in case something could have happened. And well, Firebat has the ability to clear off the board and just let his opponent have a weapon.
Well, this wouldn't clear off the board because the Tyrion would come back from Redemption with Divine Shield.
Oh, you're right.
And if he Hellfires, it would be the Tyrion because that was the first played, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think so. Oh, wait, no. Was the... You could be right. Yeah, we'll see. What ends up coming out for Redemption, but...
It's the 1/1.
That's a really big deal. So Tyrion doesn't come back. And so kind of Bobbyx's Gambit kind of got punished him in this position.
Yeah.
Now Firebat can kill off the Hydrologist, so Valinir comes back. And that sequence is fairly important because if it goes the other way around, Firebat could have shut down Bobbyex.
Yeah.
Actually, no, because he still had the Sunkeeper Tarim in hand.
Now Firebat has a relatively clear turn for Blood River Gul'dan. It will summon 2 Vulgar Homunculus and a Hook Reaver, but Windfury Harpy presents quite a big issue in the damage department of things.
It's the Sunkeeper Tarim that's the real kicker here. Firebat's gonna have 2 taunts, but Sunkeeper Tarim means that 2 Homunculus goes down fairly easy to the tokens, and then 3, 6, 10. No, it's not quite there yet.
I think max damage is even better with you hit over the Consecration Avenging Wrath is a possible lethal if you hit the Vulgar Homunculus. Right, because that'd be 4, 6, 8, 14, 18 to face, which would be exact lethal.
Yeah.
This may be a better chance for it. No.
Yeah.
Ungoro belongs to the Titan.
Interesting.
long
Does
as
he
this-
not want the extra 3? Oh, he's just going to play a spell break.
Your magic shall not save me.
Well, Lich King keeps Firebat alive. He can Lich King and bite the Wind Fury Harpy, and then there would be 10 damage on the following swing if the Spellbreaker goes bad.
But we can see he's dead to the Avenging Wrath.
There you go. And this was a matchup that I think was one of Firebat's better ones, but it's still an unfavorable one. Just to go to show you how even Warlock is going to struggle at this best of 5. And you know, I'll say it again. I am not sure if even Warlock was the right pick for this tournament. I think it is a fantastic deck at getting the job done, but, you know, there's just too many decks that are good against it right now.
Yeah, Firebat did win round 1, but Bobbyex looked like he's going to put a stop.
Priest, Clone Priest, Odd Rogue, and Odd Warrior.
Yeah, that's like 95% of this metagame right
Yeah,
now.
and then there's Secret Hunter, Death Rattle Hunter, Mid-Range Hunter. It even loses to a few Druids here and there. It's tricky, man. So, like, the deck that it's good against is, like, Mech-Cthulhu Warlock.
Okay.
You know, Peanut Shaman.
Okay, all right, we're getting there.
It's good against Test Rogue. And it is really good against Quest Mage.
Did Firebat accidentally think he was submitting to Whose Meme Reigns Supreme and that he was facing off against Brian Kibler?
Well, there's actually a funny joke that happens, a running joke in Omnistones, that Firebat always brings serious decks to Whose Meme Reigns Supreme because he just hates losing. So he ends up just, you know, kicking me and Kibler's butt a lot of times with his serious decks. And then when he comes to playoffs, he brings like a meme lineup. He brings like a lineup that's not supposed to exactly work very cleanly. It's like Death, Rattle, Paladin, Quest, Rogue.
How
It's weird.
dare he?
He has it backwards, man. Speaking of which, right now, Firebat has an opportunity to put out this Mountain Giant 3, but can also avoid the egg with the Spellbreaker. And I think you just want to get the Mountain Giant on the board, even though, you know, the 5/5 is painful.
Yeah, Bobbyex plays his own Mountain Giant, effectively. 8/8 worth of stats. Can also split it up, and he keeps the egg around.
Keeps the egg around, but Firebat does have an answer to it with the Spellbreaker. I'd be inclined to Spellbreaker because I don't know if Twilight Drake actually does too much in this position because you don't have things like Sun Fury Protector to really leverage any kind of high health minions that
Well,
can put an aggressive board.
There's a couple things to think about here. If you Spellbreaker now, it opens you up to be able to Hellfire with no repercussions at some point in the game. But Bobbyex just played a Terror Scale Stalker on the Devil's Rig. Didn't play dead.
Okay.
Floated a mana, so he probably would have if he had it. Are you expecting many more Death Rattle activators?
That's fair.
And if he cubes it, there's just eggs in that cube. It's one of the targets that you're more okay with seeing cube on.
Yeah, I just didn't want another 5/5 to come out of here because I feel like Death Rattle Hunter is much better when they can develop a board versus like, you know, they're just stuck playing, you know, Witchwood Grizzly on 5.
Yeah.
But your logic makes sense, and I think, you know, having seen this pan out, good on Firebat. It looks like he made the correct call in that spot. And those are tough, like, gut check moments. Like, do I play reactive or proactive? And it turns out when you play even Warlock, now that I think about it, you always want to play proactive. It's not really it's not a reactive deck.
It's not at all.
Yeah, you want to play the best possible minion whenever you can.
Even your reactive cards you use to be proactive with the minions that you have on board.
Yeah, you want
use
to Hellfire
Spellstone
to push through.
Yeah, Hellfire to push through, Spellstone to protect your big minions on board to allow them to push through even further. As soon as you get into a situation where you're playing reactive, you're almost 100% reliant on Blood River Gul'dan to pull you out of a situation you'd otherwise lose. So that's
It makes a lot of sense, and I'm convinced. Now, does that mean the second Twilight Drake? So in this case, Firebat chooses the silence. Doesn't want anything to really do with that cube, even if there's only eggs in it.
Yeah.
And I think no life tap here makes sense, given that he's already at 9 cards anyways.
Yeah, it makes his math, I guess, a little bit easier if he silences the cube. But I think if you didn't silence the egg last turn, you wouldn't silence the cube either.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's a little bit different in game plans because that silence is a very key card for many things. If Katarina comes down, it's going to pull a big beast. You probably need to sound set again in order to make sure that you can win at any point in the game, that you can clear the board at any point in the game. So,
agreed. It also could be that Firebat setting up for a Defile play. So, you know, what he really wants to do is soften up both these minions for 1 and 2 health, and then play Defile and Twilight Drake.
That makes sense.
And I think the pan out is going to be okay here.
Well,
is it? Because they add other egg.
He's got 1, 2, 3, but it will summon a 5/5 that will go down to a 4/4 or a 5/4. And his Twilight Drake would... Ooh.
Well, he can Hellfire here instead. So if he Hellfires, trades into a 5, he can play a 2-drop right behind it, like the Vulgar Homunculus. Buff his Spellstone twice.
Destroy.
He'll still be okay, and the Twilight Drake survives.
Yes, it would, and he'd have a 2/4 and a 4/2 compared to a 5/5 on his opponent's side of the board.
Yeah. Another alternative is just to play the Twilight Drake that he was setting up for right now.
And just make 1 trade over the cube?
Yeah.
Destroy.
And that's okay, because then Defile is out of your hand. But then the Spellstone's not like as nearly as buff, so then you have to go back to the same thing, like how do I Hellfire, how do I buff?
Yeah, you can still play Vulgar Homunculus, so it's buffed a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense too. So you can bump Defile and then play the double 2-drop.
Yeah.
So that you get a little bit of the best of both worlds. So those are the 3 plays that I think makes the most sense here. I do like this just as the first thought because it gets you under 14 as well, or under 15 rather.
Ooh, and the face attack. And Firebat even like surprises himself. He's like, "Whoa, I went face! Wow, that was aggressive of me."
Yeah. He was like, "Why are you surprised? You made the play."
My hand just went there. I don't know what happened.
I think it's more that Firebat realized that it was a tough turn, but it was the right call. Because look at Bobbyex making the trades for Firebat now. And that Spellstone buff is going to pay off because now Firebat has the ability to Twilight Drake coin Spellstone.
Yep.
And that attack was fairly brilliant. Like I was so focused on what Hunter can do to the Warlock when, again, you have to always think about how you can be proactive because Bobbyex made the trade for him.
He did.
And 7 mana is the turn before the real threats like Katarina come out. Problem is, Firebat's still not out of the woods yet. If he Twilight Drakes and coins the Spellstone, Bobbyex pulls out the Double Sword, still kind of back to the drawing board here for Firebat.
Yeah, also by using the coin, he's a turn away from Blood River Gul'dan. And also by using the Spellstone, he's...
Double Sword, Katarina.
He can't deal with the Double Sword of the Katarina. And if he draws Hooked Reaver and Bobbyex makes trades here, then he's in double trouble. Okay, now we can turn.
Well, there's just King Crush next turn.
Yeah. And I think no matter which way you slice it here, he could Hellfire Shroomburg, be 9 damage on board, 8 from hand, that's 17. He'd be at 17. So he's dead that way. Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way around this for Firebat. I think even Warlock just gets swept. Oh boy. I think Firebat's just gonna pray that he doesn't have any more damage.
Yeah, but that's plenty of damage. 13 on board, 8 from hand. I guess it's 1 over. But King Crush will close out the game. Bobbyex. 3-0.
Yep. And, may this be a lesson for all those people playing even Warlock out there. Be careful. It is dangerous out there. And Bobbyex is going to